Hi guys, welcome to the second quarter of the school year. So I just want to go over some of the new things first before we get into the lesson. So as always, go to your announcements when you first log on. So make sure that you are checking in on focus. So every day that you have my class, you have to check in on focus. If you have not checked in on focus, I will be marking you absent by 3:30. So make sure that you check in before 3:30. And then you always have today's assignments and whether or not we have a meeting. But that's changing. Last quarter, we met every day. This quarter, we're not going to meet every day. What I did was I'm making these lesson videos, which the link is right here in under today's assignments. And it's also in your modules, and I'll show you where that is in a second. So you can view this anytime during the day that you need to or have time to, and then you can do your assignment. So you don't have to be logged on, because I know a lot of you share computers or sometimes you don't have access, things like that. So I'm trying to make this easier all the way around. So for today, your assignments are to complete the A More Perfect Union pretest, look at your Edgenuity expectations, view this video, and complete the vocabulary assignment. So the pretest, remember, it's a pretest. You are not expected to know any of the responses because we haven't learned any of this yet. So it's matching, it's drop-down menus, and it's multiple choice, and there's a couple of short answer questions, just like my tests usually are. So we're going back to announcements. And then your Edgenuity expectations. So I'm not going to put the Edgenuity grades into Canvas like I have been. What I'm going to be doing is just putting in your Edgenuity overall grade into Focus. So you'll see that every week I'll update your Edgenuity grade. So your Edgenuity notes for this 9 weeks are for extra credit. I'm not requiring that you turn them in. They're extra credit, and you can find these notes below. So these 4 links right here are notes. It's not a link to the actual Edgenuity assignment. It's a link to the notes. And then you'll upload them to Focus to turn them in. I haven't got that set up yet. I'm hoping to do that by the end of the week. So these first 2 modules, there are no notes available for those. So you don't have the option of doing notes for those. And then I always give you what date they need to be done by at the very bottom. So you need to be finished with these modules by November 19th. So let's go back to announcements. So you're going to view this lesson video, and then you're going to complete the vocabulary assignment. So let's look at the vocabulary assignment real quick. So it says download the document below. In the middle column, write the definition of the word. You may use dictionary.com to help you with the definitions. And in this instance, you may copy and paste the definitions. And the last column, copy and paste a picture from Google that relates to that word. So I did the first one for you. So let's download this assignment and then open it. And so I'm going to click enable editing so I can type into it. And so you see that I did the first one for you. So the definition of bicameral is having 2 branches or chambers. And then my picture is 2 branches of government. So then you're just going to do that for the rest of these words and then save it and upload it. Whoops. So you're going to click submit assignment and then choose file. If you did it in Office 365, you can pull it from there to make sure you log in. Choose file, and then it'll open here, and you just figure out where you saved that file to. All right, and I'll show you where I'm getting the PowerPoint I'm about to go over with you. So when you log in and you click modules, you'll see the pretest up here. And then A More Perfect Union, Edgenuity expectations. This is this video. Here's the PowerPoint that we're about to go over. There's the vocabulary. And then here's some of the other assignments that you're going to be completing for this unit. So because we're doing the lesson videos instead of meeting on a regular basis, if you need extra help, what you can do is go over here to sign up for a help session. Click that, and it will open a direction menu. So it says, what is a help session? This is where you and I work one-on-one together. How do I join the session? I will call you on Teams to join the meeting on the date and at the time that you signed up so that we can chat. And you have to watch this lesson video before you ask me for help. So if you've done all that and you still are confused, still need help, click here to sign up for a help session. And so you see the meeting slots that are available and the dates over here. So this is today, which is Tuesday. I'm filming this video on Tuesday. So today, Tuesday, so Tuesday's passed for you guys. So you wouldn't be able to get a meeting with me until Wednesday, and I only have up till Friday up. So say you looked at this on Wednesday, but you can't meet with me until Thursday. So say the first time slot you can meet with me is 2 p.m. to 2:15 p.m. So you click that little checkbox and then come down here and click submit and sign up. And the question is, what do you need help with? So just tell me a more perfect union vocabulary if that's what you need help with. And then I need your first and last name. I don't really need your email address, but I definitely need to know who you are so I know who to call. And then come down here and click the sign up button. And that will tell me that I need to call you at 2 p.m. on Thursday, November 5th to talk about a more perfect union vocabulary. So I have it pulled up and ready to go. Okay, so that's how you can get one-on-one time with me. That's why I'm doing these videos, so I can have more one-on-one time with you guys and be able to explain things more in depth if you need help, because previously I wasn't able to spend much time with you guys giving one-on-one help. So now I'm going to go back to modules and we're going to review this PowerPoint. But first, I want to show you this video.
The very first document to direct how the United States should be governed was the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union. In the summer of 1776, with the Revolutionary War raging, Congress urgently needed to create a functioning government. They entrusted John Dickinson, a delegate from Pennsylvania, to draft the Articles. Dickinson, like many delegates, wanted to avoid creating a strong central government like the one they were still fighting against in the Revolutionary War. In his draft of the Articles, Dickinson was careful to give the states as much independence as possible, while limiting the functions of the new federal government. Many revisions would be made before Congress adopted the Articles. Disagreements over boundaries, taxation, and expansion had to be resolved. After more than a year of debate, the Second Continental Congress adopted the Articles on November 15, 1777. The Articles served as a non-binding plan of government until each state ratified it. More than 3 years passed before the last state, Maryland, ratified the Articles on March 1, 1781. In its approved form, the Articles united the new 13 American states into a loose confederation. It had the power to make war, negotiate diplomatic agreements, and approve Western expansion in conjunction with the Northwest Ordinance, but little more. The Articles were intended to create a weak national government designed to deal only with an immediate crisis. But following the conclusion of the War of Independence and the emergence of new priorities, its many inadequacies became obvious. The government under the Articles couldn't collect taxes or regulate trade. It couldn't even force the states to comply with the laws it passed. It's no wonder that George Washington described the government created by the Articles as little more than the shadow without the substance. As the need for a stronger federal government became apparent, political leaders from throughout the states gathered to decide how to create it. The Federal Constitutional Convention of 1787 drafted the much stronger Constitution of the United States, which replaced the Articles of Confederation in 1789.
So there's the first video. All right, so lesson 1, talking about the Articles of Confederation that you just heard about in the video. It was adopted by the Second Continental Congress in November of 1777, and it became the first constitution for the United States. Under the Articles, the states kept most of their power. They did not want a strong central government because they were fighting against Britain, who was a strong central government. Congress could conduct foreign affairs, which is dealings with other countries. They maintained armed forces such as the military, the army, the navy. They could borrow money and they could issue currency, which is money. Congress could not regulate trade, force citizens to join the army, or impose taxes, which is collect money. Under the Articles, each state had one vote in Congress. 9 out of 13 states had to approve any laws, and 13 out of 13, which is all of the states, had to approve the amendments, which are the changes to the Confederation. The Land Ordinance of 1785. This established the procedure for surveying and selling the western lands north of the Ohio River. It set up the township system, which is 6 miles by 6 miles. So it's 36 sections, each 1 mile by 1 mile. One section was reserved for schools. Land sold at auction to raise money to pay off debt from the Revolutionary War. The Northwest Ordinance was passed in 1787, and this created the Northwest Territory, which are lands east of the Mississippi River, so that's our side of the Mississippi River, and north of the Ohio River. The Northwest Territory was to be divided into 3 to 5 smaller territories, and each of the smaller territories could apply for statehood once their population reached 60,000 people. Slavery was made illegal here. This was the very first attempt by the government to stop the spread of slavery. The Land Act of 1800 was a law written by William Henry Harrison. He was the Northwest Territory rep in the House of Representatives. This law made it easier to buy land in the Northwestern Territory by setting up a payment plan. The settler had to buy at least 320 acres for $2 an acre, and they had to pay 1/2 the cost up front and the rest in 4 yearly payments. So that made it easier for people who didn't have a lot of money to get land. Problems with the Articles: they could the value of currency decreased, so the prices of goods increased. So people weren't able to buy as much. Congress had huge debt with no power to pay it off because they couldn't collect taxes. Britain held on to forts in the Great Lakes region, and Spain cut off access to the lower Mississippi River. So we were starting to run into some problems. Then we had Sheas Rebellion. This began in 1786 in Massachusetts. Farmers were thrown in jail because they couldn't pay their debts. A group of farmers, led by Daniel Sheas, forced courts in western Massachusetts to close. So there's a video about this. Hold on.
The Revolutionary War left American states in debt. To raise money, legislators raised taxes. This angered poor farmers and war veterans to the point where they formed a rebellion and almost caused a civil war in Massachusetts. Daniel Sheas, a former captain in the Continental Army, led the protest, which came to be known as Sheas Rebellion. In the summer of 1786, several thousand of Sheas' followers prevented tax collection and used force to keep debtors out of prison. They headed to Springfield to seize weapons, intending to force the Boston legislature to change the law. Massachusetts residents were terrified. The legislature realized it was powerless. The Continental Army had been disbanded after the Revolutionary War, and the federal government had no money for new troops. Finally, wealthy merchants in Boston agreed to raise an army of over 4,000 militia to fight Sheas' men.
These men were talking about forming a new country out there. There's no telling what might have happened if Sheas' Rebellion had flourished, if these guys had been able to grab all those guns and that arsenal and armed a big army. It would have been a very bad thing for the country. The people in Boston sort of put together a 4,000-man army and marched across western Massachusetts and basically blew Daniel Sheas and his friends away. They all ran for their lives when they saw these guys coming at them.
Sheas and his troops were eventually pardoned, and Massachusetts began to offer tax and debt relief. Locally, this clash was anticlimactic, but Sheas' rebellion had momentous consequences for the nation. It highlighted a weakness in the Articles of Confederation, which didn't give Congress the right to establish or fund an army.
The impact of Sheas' Rebellion was convincing people that we had to have a really strong federal government. Washington, and now I say Hamilton, and a lot of other people said, this proves that we've got to have a new constitution.
Oops. And so that's what they had to do. They had to form a new kind of government.
The Constitution is the foundation of the U.S. government. It establishes how the government is formed and how laws are passed. It also lays out the basic rights of American citizens. It's the oldest federal constitution in existence. It was framed by a convention of delegates who met in Philadelphia in May 1787. Originally, they intended only to revise the Articles of Confederation. But with the states newly independent, it became clear by mid-June that they needed a new and better defined government to keep them united. All through the summer of 1787, the delegates debated in closed sessions and drafted the articles of a new constitution. The Virginia Plan, drafted chiefly by James Madison, became the unofficial agenda for the convention. It favored the interests of the larger states. It proposed a bicameral legislature with representation based on state population, an executive chosen by the legislature, and a judiciary with life terms of service. The smaller states strongly opposed this plan. William Patterson of New Jersey offered an alternative proposal, the New Jersey Plan. It gave one vote per state in one legislative body. To resolve the differences between the two plans, Roger Sherman of Connecticut brokered what became known as the Great Compromise. It proposed that the House of Representatives would represent the population, the Senate would represent the states, and an elite group of electors would select a powerful president. In this spirit of compromise, the convention created the federal government that exists today. The convention adopted the Constitution in its original form on September 17, 1787. It went into effect a year later, when New Hampshire became the 9th state to ratify it.
Right, so let's go back to our PowerPoint. So we went over Sheas' Rebellion, January 1787. Sheas and 1,000 followers marched to Springfield, Massachusetts to overtake the federal arsenal there. The Massachusetts state militia fired on the men, killing 4 of them. Sheas and his men scattered, ending the rebellion. This scared a lot of Americans. They believed the government was too weak to protect them. So they called for a new form of government. In the Constitutional Convention, where all the men met to discuss this government, many of them called for a change to the Articles. The convention began in Philadelphia in May of 1787. The purpose was to change the Articles. So this was 10 years after the Articles of Confederation were created. 55 delegates were there. 12 out of 13 of the states were represented. Rhode Island was the only state that was not represented. George Washington was selected as the president of the convention. James Madison kept meticulous notes, and he later became known as the father of the Constitution. The meetings were not public. The delegates wanted to be free to change their mind. After the convention began, decisions were made to scrap the Articles and write a new constitution. So the Virginia Plan was written by James Madison and presented by Edmund Randolph. It called for a two-house legislature, a chief executive chosen by the legislature, and a court system. A legislature is both houses would be based on population, and small states immediately objected. Because if it was based on population, the small states automatically lose. We also had the New Jersey Plan presented by William Patterson. It's called for a one-house legislature based on equal representation. The legislature would be able to set taxes and regulate trade, which they were unable to do under the Articles of Confederation. The legislature would select the executive branch, which would be more than one person. So they came to an agreement. They settled the debate between the large and small states. They called for a two-house legislature. The lower house, which would be the House of Representatives, was based on population. And the upper house, the Senate, would be based on equal representation. Each state gets 2 senators. So the House of Representatives, it's all based on how many people live in the state. We have a total right now of 435 representatives. And for the Senate, because we have 50 states, we have 50 senators, 2 senators from each state. The 3/5 compromise. With one house being based on population, the question was raised on how to count slaves. Compromise was to count 3/5 of all slaves for representation and taxation purposes. So one slave counted for 3/5 of a person. They also agreed that Congress could not interfere with the slave trade until 1808. So that gave them 30 years of the slave trade. The approval of the Constitution, September 17th, 1787. Delegates assembled to sign the Constitution. The Constitution was then sent to the states, and it would become law of the land once 9 out of 13 states approved it. So now let's look at the lesson 3 video.
On September 17th, 1787, a convention of delegates meeting in Philadelphia adopted the Constitution. That was the first step towards it becoming the law of the land. Now, the states had to ratify it. The convention ruled that only 9 of the 13 states needed to do so for the new government to go into effect. There were strong opinions on both sides of the ratification issue. Those who opposed it were called anti-federalists. Their leading voices included George Clinton, the governor of New York, and Robert Yates, a convention delegate, also from New York. They believed the Constitution gave too much power to the federal government. They also criticized the absence of a Bill of Rights guaranteeing individual liberties such as freedom of speech. Those in favor of ratifying the Constitution were called Federalists. Their spokesmen included founding fathers Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison. They expressed their views in a series of essays known as the Federalist Papers, considered by many to be the best commentary on the principles of government ever written. The Federalists believed that an energetic federal government was needed to protect the nation and ensure its prosperity. They opposed the inclusion of a Bill of Rights, fearing that it might be interpreted as the only rights people had. As the states debated whether to ratify the Constitution, it became clear that without a Bill of Rights, it would not be accepted. The Federalists conceded the point and agreed to recommend a list of rights that would eventually become the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. On June 21, 1788, New Hampshire became the 9th state to ratify. Upon receiving the news, the Congress of the Confederation set a timetable for the start of operations under the Constitution. On March 4, 1789, the government of the United States as we know it officially began.
There we go. So the Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists. Supporters of the new Constitution were called the Federalists. These included George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay. The Federalist Papers are a series of essays written by Madison, Hamilton, and Jay, and they explained why the Constitution should be ratified. The Anti-Federalists opposed the Constitution, and these people included Thomas Jefferson and Patrick Henry. They felt a strong national government would take away the individual liberties fought for in the Revolution. December 7, 1787, Delaware became the first state to ratify it. June 21, 1788, New Hampshire became the 9th state and made the Constitution go into effect. New York and Virginia, the 2 largest states, still needed to ratify it. Both ratified after getting assurances that a Bill of Rights would be passed. In May of 1790, Rhode Island becomes the 13th and final state to ratify the Constitution. All right, so that's the end of the lesson. So now what you're going to do, the next things are to complete the reading essentials, the discussion questions, the Northwest Territory Ordinance, and then the lesson quiz. So for the reading essentials, says download the document below, read the passages and answer the questions as you read, and then upload the completed document for grading. So these are all in Microsoft Word. So go ahead and download it and then open it. Click Enable Editing to start typing. And it gives you terms to know in case you don't know what bicameral, republic, or depreciate or ordinance mean. It gives you a timeline. And so I expect you, if I don't have it blocked off, so there are some things, let's see if there's something here. So this right here means that there was a question that I blocked off, so you don't have to do that. If it's not blocked off, that means I'm going to be grading it. So when it says underline the meaning of the Constitution, I'm going to be looking for you to underline the meaning of the Constitution. And then these you should be able to type directly in. Make sure you click save and know where you're saving it, and then upload it for grading. The next thing is going to be discussion questions. So this discussion question in particular says, in what ways was the Confederation government weak? So when I say Confederation, I mean the Articles of Confederation. And don't type your answer here because that's a search box. Click the reply button and a box pops up. And you can type your response here and then click post reply. And then you have the Northwest Territory doc, which is a lot like the reading essentials. Another discussion question, and then the quiz. So take the quiz. And this quiz is 8 questions, all multiple choice, and you get 2 attempts. All right, so if you need help, click sign up for a help session, sign up for a help session so that I can give you a call on the day and time that you sign up. And if not, just continue to turn in your assignments, and I'll talk to you guys later.